the practice of the yoga is really giving you some tools to help you with the daily life. And we all know that there's so much challenge nowadays and so much stress. People have difficulty to handle it. So when you integrate this kind of practice, it really makes a difference because it gives you an altitude that changes your attitude.
Hello and welcome to It's a Journey podcast. How are you healing today? Your host, Stephanie Naidu, welcomes guests from different parts of the globe with professional expertise in health and holistic wellness. Holistic means physical, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. So what do all of our guests have in common? It's their dedication to help us with our healing journey and personal development. Let's dive into this new episode with our special guest and explore the answers in order to continue our personal journey's exploration towards healing and self-love.
From France, Christine has been drawn to Asia since her youth, when she studied Mandarin, Thai, and Burmese. After her studies, Christine started a professional life in associative projects between Europe and Asia before going into corporate life, where she worked 10 years in career management. She lived in Thailand for 4 years and moved in 1999 to Singapore, which she now calls home. Christine started teaching Kundalini Yoga in 2003 and created a company, InnerKeys, in 2005. She is trained in Thai and Chinese acupressure and Ayurvedic massage. She is a certified BodyTalk System practitioner specializing in Kundalini energy management and a Kundalini Yoga Level 1 professional trainer operating in Asia. In addition to being a gong player, Christine is trained in Yin Yoga and Laughter Yoga. She is studying Tibetan medicine and is involved in the spiritual practices of Tibetan doctors and healers. Her latest discovery is fascia therapy. In this 19th episode, I will be talking to Christine about Kundalini Yoga. Our topic today is Let Your Vital Energy Flow with Kundalini Yoga. Hello, Christine. Welcome to my podcast. It's a journey and such a pleasure to have you today. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for having me.
So I would like to start this conversation with you. And I would like you to tell me about your journey and how you became a certified Kundalini yoga teacher and a professional trainer.
Well, it started in Thailand, where I was living maybe 25 years ago. And I started with Hatha yoga. And at that time, when you were interested in yoga, I mean, it was probably the only type of yoga you would go to. And I was going every week and starting from the base. And after a few months, I would say it would be like a 3 hour session. And I enjoyed it, but there was somehow something missing to it, to the practice. And a few years later, when I was introduced to Kundalini Yoga, that really created an evidence. And after one class, I was like, I want the book of the teacher. I need this practice. That's what I was looking for. And, we will talk about it later, right? But the meditation aspect to it is really what felt that was missing in the purely physical one that I had before. So it was useful. And I think when we start our journey, it's always good to work on the body and focus on it. And even with the Kundalini Yoga at the beginning, it was very physical practice. But still, there's always this meditative part, which helped to balance, in fact, the physical practice. And that's really what was missing for me in the other type of practice. So I signed up and I became instructor. And in fact, my plan was never to teach. It was just to have that tools and to think that, okay, it's for my comfort, for my personal practice. Wherever I go, I'm going to be independent and I'd be able to have this practice. And then our trainer said, I live in US. I come few times a year to support the community, build it up, and I need help. I need trainers with me. So in fact, we were a group of young teachers, and he asked us to help him to go into the training. And so we were somehow cornered, and well, we took the opportunity, and so I would say it was by accident, but somehow it was beautiful, and well, 20 years later, I'm still there, teaching and training people. And, we always have this saying that when you want to learn about something, to teach it, in fact, is the way for you to go deeper into the knowledge and the understanding.
And you are originally from France, and you mentioned Thailand. Was yoga at this time bringing something in particular? Were you looking for something in particular in your life?
I guess what is very funny, I can recall that when I was still a student in France, and we would see some interviews, about yoga, and I would see those people with a head upside down, right? I was like, oh, they're crazy. I had no notion of what yoga was, right? And I guess, it's just when you're ready. When I was in Thailand, I started to get trained in massage, in fact, at that time, and get more interested in this kind of work, meditation, and and the yoga just came on my way.
So if we focus now on Kundalini Yoga, the word Kundalini means coil snake. So can you introduce us to the practice of Kundalini Yoga?
Yes. So in fact, there's another way to look at it. It's also the curl of the hair, right? The coil. And so there, which look like a snake. And what is considered is like it's a dormant energy that we all have. It's not totally dormant because it's like life force itself. So we always need a little bit of it. But the way it will activate in the body and go up, right, is, I would say, up to our destiny, whether it's going to evolve or not. And what is interesting is, even from other practices, what I was told and observed is that the practice of our school is probably one of the best practice to help us prepare if the Kundalini energy is going to rise in our body, and if it starts to rise, to be able to harness that force. So that's one of the,
So how do you feel when it rises? Like what's happening
from
when
all what we can read, and in fact, not people don't necessarily share about with this awakening. It's something very, very personal, and from all the books I could see and experience of people around me, everyone is going to experience it in a different way, because when it starts to rise, it creates heat, it creates a lot of energy. And if some people had a life where they drink a lot, they didn't have a very balanced lifestyle, the activation is going to be much more rocky, much more, much more strong on the physical aspect. If people are already having a very sattvic lifestyle, it's going to be very smooth.
Okay. So you are a professional trainer, and you are also a teacher. And what I've noticed is that often the yoga practitioners, they wear a white, sometimes colored turban on their heads. So what is it for?
Well, the turban itself, the dastar, is usually can be like a 4 or 5 meter long, even longer at times. And so it goes several rounds around the head. And what it does, it holds the bones of the head together. And in fact, it's said that it's helping with concentration, with calmness. And when you see the Sikh practitioners, right? I mean, our master was a Sikh, and that's why he said that he brought some of the aspect of his personal practice into this yoga. And one of them was that. And it's not necessarily always a turban that we have to wear. It's just head cover. Because when you have strong meditation practice, you can have headache if you don't cover your head. And in fact, you will specify at times, you say, okay, for this specific meditation, please cover your head. And when we have the early morning practice as well, we are asked to cover the head. So it's not mandatory, it's not all the time, but it's at times. And in fact, it's also protecting you, because when you meditate, it creates an energy, and you can hold it longer if you protect your crown chakra.
Okay. So you referred a little bit to him, but I'd like to know more. Who is this person who started Kundalini Yoga?
Well, to start before him, we have to know that Kundalini is not a brand name. So when you talk about Kundalini itself, well, that's this energy that we all have in ourselves, but it's also a yoga practice. It's also a practice that you can find. If you go online, you will find a lot of different type of Kundalini yoga per se.
Okay.
When I first arrived in Singapore, I was looking on it, and I end up sitting with elderly Indian people who were doing a lot of breathing exercise, and they called it Kundalini Yoga. And I met, when I was in India, people who were practicing Kundalini Yoga, but it was a different practice as well. So for us, we have to specify that it's the school that has been created by Yogi Bhajan. And so he was an Indian, and he came to US in the 60s, and he created his school. And now it's all over the world, this practice. And it's true that the way he built it up, it was with, we can recognize some hatha posture in it. And of course, he brought part of his personal religious practice in that, with the language of the Gurmukhi, which is the sacred language of the Sikhs. So all the mantra that we practice are in Gurmukhi. They are not in Sanskrit. And he said a lot of other language works, of course, a lot of the mantra, but he said, I'm just using what I know from my personal practice. So that's what he shared with us. And there's something quite interesting with in the Sikh tradition. They really have developed a science of the sound current. And that's probably something quite specific that he brought to the practice.
Okay. So during our Kundalini Yoga group class, you led us through a specific set. So tune in, pranayam, warm up, kriya, relaxation, and meditation. Could you please tell us more about each sequence and their benefits?
So we start with a tuning, and the tuning is like, when you go into the parking, into the cinema, you have your ticket, your entrance. So somehow we build an energetic bubble, and that comes with that starting mantra. And the mantra is Om Namo Gurudev Namo. And this mantra, what is beautiful, it just helps you to connect with the higher self. And it's what it says, that you're bowing to that energy, to your own capacity to raise yourself to higher level of consciousness. And it's beautiful. When we say Om Namo Guru, Guru is the darkness, Guru is the light. So the Guru is the teacher, but it's the one that brings you from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge. And here, what is beautiful is you're calling upon the Guru within you. You don't bow to any Guru outside, right? And me as a teacher, I bow to that Guru within me, but I also bow to the teachings itself. So to the whole line, I would say, of teaching. And then the teaching flows through me. And then from one person to another one, right?
So then pranayama.
So that's the first part, right? Yes. That's the tuning, right?
Yes,
so we have created a little bubble, and then we will have warm-ups, pranayam. So usually it can be one or the others, right? Or most of the time together, because in fact, that's probably one of the specificity. When we have asanas, postures, we most of the time either have some mudra going with it, or we can have some specific pranayama. So it's not necessarily only at the beginning, but usually we tend to have a first set, which is really focusing on the breathing, because that's the basic, life is just what's happening between two breaths when you think about it, first breath, last breath. And whatever happens to you in your life, the first thing that is affected is a breath. So it's very important to understand the breathing. And most of the time we take it for granted. We don't know how it works. and we don't realize how it is affected by the people around us, the event, whatever happened to us, right? The first thing that will be affected is the breath. So that's why we really encourage this kind of practice. And usually it's so boring that we hardly do it on ourselves. So the idea is really to bring it, in the class, and then it will help you to develop your stamina. And that's one of the beauty of it, is it will be useful for you in your daily life. It's just like you go to your class and you're out of the class, it's another world, right? No, whatever you're going to learn and develop in the class is going to be useful for you. So the breathing aspect will help you to have more stamina. If you run, if you swim, if you chant, right? And then, of course, we'll have some warm-ups, especially in cold countries. So this same is going to be adapted and adjusted to the needs of people, or I would say to their level of flexibility. And then we will have kriyas, which are sets which are engineered with asana written in a certain order for specific purpose. And the beauty of Kundalini Yoga is that we have hundreds of sets, which means that the format of each class can be completely different. Some classes, you're going to maybe use your arms more, your legs more, lying down, standing, jumping. And we have even a little bit of cardio, not so much, but there's big variety. So you can at times address specific body parts or specific systems of the anatomy, specific functions, right? So you want to work on the liver, you want to work on emotions, right? So we can really focus on what are the specific needs of the student if needed. And then there's always, of course, the relaxation, which is almost as important as a set, because when you have a physical set, you are going to stimulate specific type of circulation, of energy within the body. And that's the first part, to initiate that circulation within. And the second part is to allow the body to integrate what you've developed and what you have activated. And that's where the relaxation is really important. And of course, for us, somehow everything starts at that moment when we can sit for meditation. And in fact, all the physical practice that we have is meant for you to be able to sit and meditate.
Okay.
And that's why our classes tend to last a little bit longer, because when you have to bring all those different sequences, you need the time, right?
Yeah. Can you tell me the benefits associated for each part, or you can, if this is more relevant, pick the most important part, and then tell me the benefits.
Well, the pranayama, as I was saying, right, helps you to develop your stamina. Okay. The physical part is going to work on the different circulation, on activating some of the body functions. It's going to work on your flexibility as well. And the meditation is what's going to help to balance body, mind.
Okay. So I was wondering, why should we close our eyes when practicing Kundalini Yoga?
Well, at times you will be asked to open your eyes for very specific exercise. But the idea most of the time is to look within, not to compare yourself to others, not to look at you in the mirror. And so that's why we don't like rooms with mirrors, because it's going to attract your attentions, right? The idea is really to look inside.
Yeah, I like what you say about comparing to others, because I've attended yoga classes, and when we have our eyes open, we're like, oh, am I doing right? And let's see this person, how this person is doing, and I'm not. And so that's
we are in this comparative and competitive mode, which is just not what we want. And what is, when you close your eyes, you're going to be also more tuned into what's happening inside. So it will give more depth to the experience you're having.
Absolutely. Both is true. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about you and your work. So this year you are involved in the 2023 European Yoga Festival in the overall organization. How's Kundalini Yoga is getting ground worldwide?
So it started in the 60s when Yogi Bhajan went to US. So he created a community and he started a festival. And it started almost at the same time in Europe. In Europe, it was started by mainly Germans and Dutch. And they like to come to France in summer. And so that's where I'm lucky, because so it's not far from my house as well. And so every year there will be those 10 days where people come from everywhere to meet and to practice. And along the yoga practice, there's also a very specific type of meditation that we call white tantric yoga. And usually there will be 3 full days in those 2 festivals in US and in France. So overall, all over the world, you will have local, national festivals, but usually the most that they have is only 1 day of this white tantric yoga, which is really a very, very specific type of meditative practice that goes really deep in the psyche and can really clear a lot of things. So that's why those 2 festivals are the highlight, I would say, usually in the year of Kundalini yogis, and they always try to join at least one of them. So for the last few years, everything was stopped, right, with the COVID event, but we restarted last year. And in fact, we started in France in a new environment, which is near Paris now. So easier for a number of people to join. It's a camping experience. But some people can still have some room if they want and adjust to this kind of life, right? We start very early in the morning, around 4 a.m. with morning practice. And then throughout the day, you have access to different type of classes, teachings, chanting. And it's really beautiful. And it's really, usually for all of us, it's really a support in our personal practice, because it really gave you that energy. And what is amazing is this, for me last year, for example, I was very busy with the work, with the organization, so I couldn't join so many classes. And still, just to be in the environment, I was glowing at the end of the week. Even I was very tired, and even I didn't have so many practice, but just to be surrounded by so much energy was amazing. It was still feeding me, even if I didn't practice that much.
That's unbelievable. And what is the month or the dates for this festival?
Usually the US one is at the summer solstice, so it's end of June, and the European one will be end of July, beginning August.
Okay, super. I'd like to now talk about something a bit more sensitive, is a common belief. Common belief that Kundalini Yoga is a dangerous practice. And you were talking just a little bit at the beginning of the interview about, if you don't have a healthy lifestyle, things that can happen. So tell me more about, what we can understand by dangerous.
Yeah, I heard so when I started, and I was not worried, but I was wondering why there is such a reputation. And in fact, Yogi Bhajan always say in the set, there's always a time indication, and he asks for all those specific exercise, just do the time that I have written, and you won't have any problem. It's just if you overdo, that you can take risk. And in fact, the biggest risk is to have sort of a pathological rising of your Kundalini energy. It means if you take drugs, if you have emotional shock, this can happen. And then it's difficult to manage it, right? But if you just do, you don't ask yourself questions, right? In fact, the idea when we talk about the rising of Kundalini, it's mainly the rising of your consciousness. It's not so much the physical symptom of it, and we don't necessarily focus on it. When people call me and say, "Oh, how many days before my Kundalini rise?" I say, "Well, you knock at the wrong door, buddy, because the idea is to rise your consciousness. Those symptoms will happen if they have to happen, but it's not our focus at all."
And you were saying that if we do it like excessively, isn't it like everything else? Like if I eat too much of like sugar, that's not going to be good for my health, for sure.
Exactly.
Even if I exercise too much, it can be bad for my health.
Yes.
So, okay, noted. So my last question for you before we close this conversation, this interview, is about your personal daily practice. So if you have one, don't have one, what is it?
Yeah, that's part. We call it the sadhana, and there's the big sadhana, which is the group practice that usually we have very early morning in our school. And then there's the personal practice, so the little sadhana, I would say. And this one, you don't have to do it necessarily at 4 a.m., although that's a specific time where everything is more quiet and you can go deeper into your meditation, right? You won't have people coming in, barging in the room or telephone ringing, etc. So that's, and well, it's say that, before sunrise, there's a very specific energy that allows you to go deeper into your practice. This said, like everything, if you are an athlete, you need to practice every day. If you whatever you do in life, right? If you don't practice, you lose it. And if you want to be supported in your life, in fact, you need this kind of practice. And that's what makes the difference nowadays. When I see all the people from my school, all the students, the practice of the yoga is really giving you some tools to help you with the daily life. And we all know that there's so much challenge nowadays and so much stress. People have difficulty to handle it. So when you integrate this kind of practice, it really makes a difference, because it gives you an altitude that changes your attitude and help you to be in a flow, be able to develop a sensitivity so that when wind blows, you don't face the wind. You just, when there's no wind, you know that you have to wait. And when it's blowing, it's time to be active and to move and to have the wind in your back, right, to support you. So it's it's a lifestyle. It's not only a practice, and you need to practice every day, definitely. So I practice different type of meditation, and we also have not challenge, but we know that when we practice for a certain length of time, there will be specific effect. And one of the classic practice is to do something and to have a practice for 41 days, and then we have the 90 days. So we have like different number of days of practice, and if you miss one, you have to restart. And in fact, the whole exercise is really pushing you, right, to be very organized with your days and to make the time for it. So it's just to be able to do your practice on a daily basis is already working on you, right? Mm-hmm. And then you add the effect of a specific practice, breathing, mantra that you are bringing in. But and for me, that was the biggest challenge at the beginning. My first practice was maybe 3 minutes, and I had to constantly restart it because I would forget it, because I had so many different activities in my life. So it's just to be able to integrate it. And it starts with few minutes. And then, of course, you develop with time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. It's it's really, really interesting. Thank you so much, Christine, for being with us today. Thank you. It was very interesting. I love this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
And thank you. It's always a pleasure to share. And for the people, you have nothing to lose, right? Just be curious. It's just like there's so many menus and food to try. It's exactly what it is, right? It's just have the curiosity to try. And it might not be something that you feel connected to at the moment you try it, but the day you will need it, you will come back to it for sure. And you'll know it's there. So that's what I always encourage people, just try.
You can learn more about Christine on Facebook at InnerKeys, on LinkedIn at Christine Plaud, or on our website www.innerkeys.com. If you didn't have time to write everything down, or if you have any doubts regarding the spelling, no worries. All the links are listed in the description section on our YouTube channel at Ujjivati. Thank you to all our listeners, and see you very soon for more on healing, self-love, and your personal journey.
Thank you for listening and for taking time for yourself. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast, share this episode with others on social media, or leave a rating and a review. To catch the latest from Ujjwati, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Ujjwati. Thanks again and see you on the next episode.